Salutations, dear audience, and welcome to the 5th episode of the BCC channel, Empathy, Knowledge, and Self-Government. I'm reading a text from the same device that is recording me reading, and before I go further, have to say that I wish I could express this extemporaneously. But to attempt to do this would be catastrophic, as it could result in this broadcast reaching an epic scale of time. I suppose catastrophic is a bit of an exaggeration. But nonetheless, it is out of respect for this experiential material that is time that I am now reading from a written text, and thus subjecting the words I utter to a prescribed plan rather than letting them dance out of my mind and mouth freely. What is this respect exactly, and why is it necessary? Does it rely on the idea of time being a scarce material, or is it something else? Is it more a matter of attention, as measured by time? A respect for the attention of your visual and auditory senses? Keep these questions in mind and what they are missing as we go forth in our journey, whose total running time is about 120 minutes. In today's often disembodied social space, where bonds in the private sphere face a perpetual desire for public recognition and publicity, reputation and being seen, the public discourse focuses on the fear of others, on new mythologies of invasion, presenting the quest for truth as a vain pursuit, and encouraging the impulse to protect oneself from a supposedly dangerous outside that could threaten one's way of life. Meanwhile, global politics are dominated by governments that turn toward control in domains of free speech, migration, and social and economic mechanisms that guide culture. In the workplace, the pressure to work more, thanks in part to being always connected, is fed by the small amount of meaningful jobs available and the anxiety of being replaceable. In such conditions, brain space for free thinking, for well-being, and for the search for meaning in our lives become exponentially more scarce as our platforms and spaces for expression appear to become, somewhat paradoxically, more plentiful. In this context, as well as the awareness of everything that is missing, we propose to explore how empathy and free knowledge could rework institutions, ways of governing, capacities to organize, private spaces, public discourses, personal and professional relationships, and administrations, making the structural systems of self-censorship, limitation, compliance, and competition obsolete. We will look at how individual and group initiatives, authors, artists, and researchers have been looking for new and renewed ways of working, living, loving, thinking, nourishing, and being together in a complex and conflicted world. Welcome to Part 1. What is empathy? Investigating views and narratives of self and other. We begin with the first part of Forced Emotions by Gia Honsdottir, a work we will be seeing cut up in pieces throughout the broadcast, which concerns feelings of numbness, emotional detachment, and being caught up in the standards of the Hollywood dream romance. Following this, we have Learning Empathy, a conversation with Serge Tisserand, a psychiatrist and psychologist who discusses the 3 different types of empathy that humans can develop from childhood on, and how to encourage its development, evoking the relationship between empathy and machines or algorithms that imitate human emotions, and how empathy can be manipulated or taken advantage of for corporate or political interests. Then we move into the kitchen for Kusamachi from Radio Surreali, a video recipe memory from the program 1001 Recipes, where the Syrian exile radio invited listeners to send in recipes from home alongside memories of the dish. The resulting videos from the recipes and memories recorded by the group in France help to harbor connection and empathy through cooking and a togetherness within a diaspora through a shared virtual meal and associated memories. Then we have Purify the Air in Your Mind, conversation with Mako Ishizuka. In this video essay, the artist Mako Ishizuka, born in Japan and living and working in Sweden, talks about 2 of her projects and research related to observing daily life and gaps existing in societies. And here to consider nature as an other that we can relate to. She offers ways to embed plants and fruits in changing our ways of thinking about what is human and what is not, and thus to change our way of life and to improve our quality of life in connecting differently to our environment and to others. Then we have Moon ABC by Elizabeth Aitai, a stop-motion video based on the Moon alphabet. Over the course of 2 years, from 2014 to 2015, Aitai created an image-based font with the use of her camera and the light of the full moon. Each letter, a 1-second photograph, traced and captured by the movement of her hands. Using the moon as an agent of communication, Moon ABC explores the universal condition of emotion by posing rhetorical questions, poetic reflections on science and emotion in an increasingly technology-based world. Following this, we have a book review from the archives, Edward Said's Orientalism. This book review concerns Said's 1974 publication on Orientalism and how this notion has been constructed as an instrument of colonialism. Reviewing this book today, over 40 years after its publication, invites us to reflect on how it resounds with current issues, as Said inscribes his reflection in a larger redefinition of history and identity. Then we conclude this chapter with Forced Emotions Part 2, where the princess continues watching the death of Jack scene from Titanic as she cuts onions. After this, we will have an 11-minute discussion break accompanied by Part 1 of Siamese Acres by David Bayes, where we find a planet orbiting a single red dwarf star that is held together by a singularity and tended by a farmer, Simon, whose purpose is to keep the singularity, and thus what remains of life, going.
Well, keep checking them. Keep looking. Is there anyone alive out there? Can anyone hear me?
Alors bonjour, merci de cette occasion d'échanger ensemble. Alors je m'appelle Serge Tisseron, je suis de formation psychiatrique, docteur en psychologie, je suis chercheur associé à l'université Paris 7 Denis Diderot et membre de l'Académie des technologies. Donc, le mot d'empathie aujourd'hui on l'entend beaucoup et très souvent on le comprend mal, on a l'impression que c'est la capacité de pouvoir se mettre à la place d'autrui. C'est beaucoup plus compliqué que ça. En fait, il y a plusieurs composantes dans l'empathie. Alors la première composante, ce qu'on appelle la composante émotionnelle, elle apparaît aux alentours de 1 an chez l'enfant, c'est la capacité d'identifier la signification des mimiques d'autrui, comprendre ses émotions. Je vois que tu es content, je vois que tu es triste, je vois que tu es en colère. La deuxième composante de l'empathie, elle apparaît quand l'enfant va à peu près 4 ans et demi, c'est ce qu'on appelle la théorie de l'esprit, c'est la capacité de l'enfant de comprendre que l'autre peut éprouver les mêmes émotions que moi pour d'autres raisons. Et c'est la possibilité de comprendre que chacun a une représentation du monde différente en fonction de ses expériences. Donc c'est un âge très important chez l'enfant parce qu'avant 4 ans et demi, l'enfant raisonne en termes de gentil et méchant. Et il est incapable mentalement de comprendre qu'on peut avoir des comportements ni gentils ni méchants, mais dictés par son expérience du monde. Et puis la troisième composante de l'empathie, elle se développe entre 8 ans et 12 ans, enfin tout au long de la vie, mais spécifiquement elle commence entre 8 ans et 12 ans, et c'est la capacité de se mettre émotionnellement à la place de l'autre. Donc c'est pas seulement cognitif, comme vers 4 ans et demi, c'est vraiment cognitif et émotionnel. C'est pour ça qu'on appelle l'empathie mature, c'est la capacité de pouvoir se dire par exemple, je vois que tu es content, empathie émotionnelle, je comprends pourquoi tu es content, même si moi ce qui t'arrive ne me rendrait pas content, empathie cognitive, et c'est aussi la possibilité de se dire, mais si j'étais à ta place, si j'aimais tellement ce qui t'arrive, je serais aussi content que toi. Et donc ces trois composantes de l'empathie, elles ont toutes besoin d'être encouragées. Celle qui a le moins besoin, c'est l'empathie émotionnelle, un peu plus l'empathie cognitive, et la capacité de se mettre émotionnellement à la place d'autrui. Il faut vraiment imaginer des protocoles pour arriver à l'encourager. Et donc c'est comme ça que j'ai conçu le jeu des trois figures, avec l'idée d'imaginer une activité théâtrale pratiquée par les enseignants dans les classes, à raison d'1 fois par semaine, et cette activité théâtrale permet aux enfants de mieux identifier les mimiques de leurs interlocuteurs, parce que certains enfants ont de la difficulté à le faire, permet aux enfants de mieux comprendre les raisons pour lesquelles chacun peut agir autrement que ce qu'on attend, et puis pouvoir se mettre émotionnellement à la place de l'autre, prendre sa place, se mettre dans sa peau. Le développement des travaux sur l'empathie a montré que les gens acceptent beaucoup mieux de faire quelque chose lorsqu'ils ont l'impression d'avoir été compris. Et donc du coup, ça a évidemment donné naissance à toute une nouvelle forme de management, dans lesquelles on n'impose pas directement une décision, mais on la fait passer de telle manière qu'on arrive à faire comprendre qu'on a compris son interlocuteur, qu'on est préoccupé de lui, qu'on est préoccupé de la difficulté qu'il pourra avoir à appliquer ce qu'on lui demande, mais quand même, qu'on lui demande quand même, voilà. Et donc du coup, il y a une nouvelle forme de management extrêmement vicieuse, qui amène à faire passer des décisions très compliquées, très pénibles pour ceux qui doivent les appliquer, mais les faire passer de la manière la mieux aménagée possible. Mais parallèlement à ça, il faut voir aussi que le développement technologique, le développement du deep learning, permet aujourd'hui à des machines d'avoir une connaissance fine des émotions que les gens peuvent éprouver, surtout en utilisant des données de Facebook, voilà, des logiciels finalement qui peuvent créer artificiellement le sentiment pour l'usager qu'il aurait affaire à un humain qu'il comprendrait, alors qu'en fait c'est un robot qui gère des millions de données. Et donc ça c'est un énorme danger évidemment, parce que vous voyez que la capacité d'empathie de l'humain est limitée, voilà. C'est difficile de comprendre qu'est-ce que vous aimez vraiment si ce n'est pas quelque chose que moi j'aime aussi, mais une machine n'a pas d'état d'âme pour créer l'illusion qu'elle partage les mêmes centres d'intérêt que quelqu'un, parce que une machine n'a rien à dissimuler, elle peut totalement simuler. On s'aperçoit que chez l'être humain, pour renforcer l'empathie, il va falloir donner des informations sur la manière dont les autres vivent, déjà, c'est le rôle de l'école, il y a des gens dans des pays différents qui vivent différemment de nous, ils ont d'autres points de vue sur le monde. Il va falloir évidemment développer l'empathie, c'est le jeu des trois figures, mais il va falloir aussi permettre aux gens de faire des choses ensemble. Et on sait aujourd'hui que la meilleure façon de développer l'empathie des individus, c'est de leur fixer une tâche commune. Ils se découvrent, ils découvrent leurs compétences respectives, ils apprennent à s'apprécier, à se respecter, et voyez que l'empathie, elle ne s'apprend pas seulement par des informations qui sont données en amont sur ce que sont les autres, elle se découvre aussi dans des activités partagées.
Kusamachi remind me of my parents' house in Syria and our last family reunion with my sisters, their children and the extended family. Of course, our complete family only meets a few days per year. Everyone is busy working or living in a different region or even continent. Stuffed zucchini is a dish that unites our family. The scent of slow-cooked mint, garlic and tomato reminds me of our living room, our house and even our neighborhood. We stopped the fan, even in the summer, just so that the food wouldn't get cold. I haven't heard any news of my neighborhood. Everyone has left the country, and we do not know the people who have stayed. Many Syrians have changed their way of cooking. Now that I live abroad, I choose the simplest way when I cook. I only make easier versions of the traditional recipes that I know, using good products. Syrians living inside the land have more difficulties to access food than others. Causes for hardship are the siege of certain regions and cities, the high price and unavailability of raw materials, the low amount of agricultural production.
In my art practice, as well as in my daily life, I deal with psychological and physical distances, using my experiences and imagination as a springboard. After I left the environment where I grew up in Japan, I felt people appear to be more engaged within oneself. Stereoscope in Society is a series of social projects in which I look at the society with the eyes of a stranger and also of an inhabitant. I suggest an antidote to certain social situations with my small intervention as a prototype. Pure diffusion is one of these interventions. My nose feels irritated often in Paris. and I noticed so many people complaining, expressing their negative emotions on the street. So I decided to work on this bad atmosphere, polluted air, and people in bad mood in Paris. The pollutants and toxins can cause headaches and irritations, and some plants can purify the air, filtering them. A single plant might not do a lot, but what if everybody in town takes care of these air purifying plants? The plants may not only improve the air quality but also the life quality. I bought 2 plants that purify the air and are easy to grow and propagate. Ivy and spider plants. I had joy taking care of them. I cut vines and tubers and placed them in water, and over 8 months, 2 mother plants produced more than 80 baby plants. I presented the project with the plants at the window gallery in the residential area of Paris. In the end of the exhibition, which lasted for 1 month, I distributed the plants to the visitors as well as the passers-by. It can be for oneself, but also for their families and friends. When I handed the plant, I also taught how to take care of it, including how to propagate, so that they can also spread the baby plants to more people. People seem to be happy to receive a plant, maybe because it is for free. Some sent me the photos how the plant grows at their place. Such reactions made me content. At the grocery shop, I noticed there are quite a few bananas that are beaten up or missing the stem and often standing alone away from clusters. When buying bananas, people divide as much as they want from a cluster in many places in Europe. I imagine that people ruin some by being not careful when searching or dividing, and avoiding the ones that do not look perfect. I started to see these left bananas as if humans, like the ones that are bullied in the class. They grew up to be appreciated by people eating, not to be thrown away. So when I'm buying bananas, I collect these left bananas to give a shining life. Also, the beaten up bananas are sweeter. Same with mushrooms, I collect the left ones, and aged and slightly dried ones have much deeper taste of umami.
Pour leur part, les Français et les Anglais, et dans une moindre mesure les Allemands, les Russes, les Portugais, les Italiens et les Suisses, possèdent une longue tradition de ce que j'appellerais l'orientalisme, qui est une manière de s'arranger avec l'Orient fondée sur la place particulière que celui-ci tient dans l'expérience de l'Europe occidentale. L'Orient n'est pas seulement le voisin immédiat de l'Europe, il est aussi la région où l'Europe a créé les plus vastes, les plus riches et les plus anciennes de ses colonies, la source de ses civilisations et de ses langues. Il est son rival culturel, et il lui fournit l'une des images de l'autre qui s'imprime le plus profondément en lui. Écrit en 1978, cet ouvrage se révèle d'une actualité brûlante dans le contexte du monde post-11 septembre, de la France après les attentats, de la montée continue des nationalismes en Europe et aux États-Unis dans l'Amérique du gouvernement de Donald Trump. On peut dire que la déconstruction politique et culturelle de la polarité Orient-Occident qu'on trouve dans ce livre nous invite à repenser nos représentations et la relation entre les connaissances scientifiques et la politique. Édouard Saïd examine comment la représentation de l'autre est construite, mais aussi comment l'Occident a élaboré sa propre identité par opposition à un Orient fantasmé. Il nous parle alors du contexte historique de l'extension des empires et du colonialisme. Il montre que l'orientalisme serait une justification idéologique de l'impérialisme économique, culturel et politique.
Well, my interest in Orientalism began for two reasons. One was an immediate thing, that is to say, the Arab-Israeli War of 1973, which had been preceded by a lot of images and discussions in the media and the popular press. And the second one, which has a much longer history in my own life, was the constant sort of disparity I felt between what my experience of being an Arab was and the representations of that one saw in art. I mean, I'm talking about very great artists, you know, like Delacroix and Ingres and Jérôme and people like that, novelists who wrote about the Orient, you know, like Disraeli or Flaubert. And, you know, the fact that those representations of the Orient had very little to do with what I knew about my own background in life.
Le cinéma et la télévision associent l'arabe soit à la débauche, soit à une malhonnêteté sanguinaire. Il apparaît sous la forme d'un dégénéré hypersexué, assez intelligent, il est vrai, pour tramer des intrigues tortueuses, mais essentiellement sadique, traître, bas. Les bandes d'actualité et les photographies de presse montrent toujours les Arabes en grand nombre. Rien d'individuel, pas de caractéristiques personnelles. La plupart des images représentent la rage et la misère de la masse ou des gestes irrationnels, donc désespérément excentriques. Derrière toutes ces images se cache la menace du djihad. Conséquence, la crainte que les musulmans ou les Arabes ne s'emparent du monde.
Well, Gramsci, in the prison notebooks, says something that has always tremendously appealed to me, that history deposits in us our own history, our family's history, our nation's history, our tradition's history, which has left in us an infinity of traces, all kinds of marks, you know, through heredity, through collective experience, through individual experience, through family experience, through relations between one individual and another. A whole book, if you like, a series of an infinity of traces. But there's no inventory. There's no orderly guide to it. You know? So Gramsci says, therefore the task at the outset is to try to compile an inventory. In other words, to try and make sense of it. And this seems to me at any rate, to be the most interesting sort of human task. It's the task of interpretation. It's the task of giving history some shape and sense for a particular reason, not just that, you know, to show that my history is better than yours or my history is worse than yours. I'm a victim and you're somebody who's oppressed people and so on. But rather to understand my history in terms of other people's history. In other words, to try to understand, to move beyond, to generalize one's own individual experience to the experience of others. And I think the great goal is, in fact, to become someone else, to transform itself from a unitary identity to an identity that includes the other without suppressing the difference. That, he says, is the great goal. And for me, I think that would be the case.
Welcome to part 2, Inside and Outside, Tools for Knowledge and Relationships. We begin with our first Instagram story to be featured on the BCC channel. This is Wounding the Olives from Amar Albaik. Wounding the olives is an Arabic term for opening longitudinal incisions in each olive to facilitate the final maturity process, or tastes maturity process, of agriculture and harvesting. The olive is a wood core surrounded by dense, rare, magic savor. Olive is oil. Olive, which, to vegetarians like El Baik, adds philosophical significance to the importance of olives throughout human history. Following this, we have instrument controller interface inside the artist studio with Letitia Sonami. Here, Letitia Sonami discusses and plays her new instrument, the Spring Spire, while discussing the concepts of instruments, controllers, and interfaces within the fields of electronic music and human existence. Then we move on to Forced Emotions Part 3, where the princess continues her tear-jerking, onion-cutting quest. Then we have The Switch by Ariat Abu Kura. In this work, also originating on Instagram, we are reminded of how, in the time of massive destructions inputs in the outer worlds, we should find our own switch and maintain it. The state of mind which protects us, our inner world. This is the switch. Then we move on to My Neocortex and Computer Computer, two more works from Elizabeth Aitai. Both Computer Computer and My Neocortex are a continuation of Aitai's Moon ABC. The videos are stop motion videos created digitally and collaged with recordings of the moon, in addition to the moon alphabet that is used as a font. They are intentionally silent. The questions, displayed in a childlike manner, cannot be answered easily, if at all. The phrases used in these three videos derive from notes that Aitai made while reading about and contemplating technology and the Western world's reliance on it, alongside the reported decline in empathy among young adults that has been recorded and commented on by writers like Sherry Turkle. Is this a natural development of humans in the pre-robotic age? Or is it a symptom of an oversaturated yet changing mind? Then we have Listen, Conversation in the Age of Digital Reproducibility. How do we play the game of conversation in the contemporary moment, a time when conversation is less a direct exchange between people and more a speech broadcast on platforms to a semi-anonymous mass whose reception and access is filtered by algorithms that show mostly what they want to hear and see, where ideas, images, and words can be reproduced and distributed at unprecedented scales regardless of their reliability? How does this impact the exchange of ideas and discourse about and through contemporary art, and how does this filter bubble interact with the world outside of the institution of contemporary art? The big conversation space intervenes in today's game of conversation through exchanges with museum visitors at La Panacée and Montpellier, based on a deck of playing cards with questions made on the occasion of the Talk Show Festival, curated by Nicolas Bourriaud in summer 2018. Conversations ensue where parties reflect on their use and views of media, truth, art, empathy, and discourse, showing how the work of listening and understanding can be great tools of resistance. Following this, we return to The Diligent Princess with part 4 of Gia Honsdottir's Forced Emotions. Then we turn to our second discussion break, carried along by the second half of Simon's Acres by David Bayes, where Simon's commitment to his farm and the singularity is put to the test, and we are reminded of how state management systems affect and shape our lives, asking us to ponder the survival mechanisms we need moving forward, and questioning how far our traditions, religious or technological, may stretch as we become more advanced.
think that is the range of relationship. It kind of describes the range of relationship with the outside world and how it manifests itself. I think of the interface being a little more some kind of dependent on the outside world. I would think of a fader box as a controller. It's controlling things in a very specific way. The instrument is maybe more autonomous. Silver color and kind of like fits this wheel pretty much. I'm not a very good nail polisher, but it doesn't matter. People can't really see. But then when I play, it kind of shows. Sometimes I get better comments about the nails than about the music. You know, people notice the nails for some reason. I guess it's something like women doing electronics. You know, if you get like kind of like if you get more, if you get kind of like a little more glamorous. It gets people's attention.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, I think it's because of the tradition of male electronics, and that also it's all about the music. It's not about anything else. You know, that kind of music has a little. I have to put my diamond too, but I'll look at it later. So kind of this idea that you know, it's all about the music. And it's not about appearance. So I think it's a lot about appearance. You know, it's like conveying some kind of feeling of certainty. So glamour, it's not very glamorous, but glamour help some kind of create an image of certainty, for me at least.
So you see it as like a form of preparation?
You know, preparation and kind of concentration. And some kind of entering a space of spectacle in a certain way, even though you can't really say what I do is spectacle, but it is a certain presentation or a certain act. So the nail polish is the simplest way, because I don't really do costumes that much. So it's a very lazy way of creating persona. It's my lazy persona. See? It's pretty good. Oh, I have to put the diamond too. Yeah, put this one here. See, it just changes everything.
What are the things you're connecting right now?
Now I'm connecting the audio signals so they can be analyzed by the computer. So there's 3 audio signals and that are coming from these things here. That's one of them. So I'm connecting them so that most of the work is actually done by the software, the neural networks. So that's how I'm connecting. I keep on thinking, oh, I should have something, you know, something that looks good, you know, kind of a nice plug or something. But then I was like, you know, nobody can see this, so it's like whatever. You know, you have to choose your rituals. Otherwise, we'll never get there. See this? I can't see too well here. They're like silk. They feel like silk. I went to a spring store in Paris. There's spring stores everywhere, but springs rule the world. You know, you have springs to everything. From like trucks, use springs for their shock absorbent, to like watches. Everything is ultimately made with springs. They're very interesting.
Why these specific strings for this?
It had to be kind of like, you know, every springs have very different tensions, and these ones have had a nice feel, a nice movement, and because they're activating the signal, I had to have some kind of not too tight, but just, nice enough springiness. And, I mean, it has to do with the lengths, how tight they are, but also it just feels really nice. So this is like telling the neural networks. I'm loading the neural networks and it's saying like how many parameters is it going to look at, how many features does it have to extract. So in this case, it has to extract 18 features from the wheel.
What does it? What does it mean to extract it?
It's looking at particular features of the signal that's controlling. That's going to be the input to the learning system, to the neural networks. So it's just saying, this is what is relevant, and this is what it was trained with. So you have to make sure that when it plays back the models, that it's actually using the same extraction. It's like extracting features. Like this is the signal coming from the extractions, and then if you look at the, let's see, analysis, feature extraction. So it's looking, these are the three inputs from the three different microphones or pickups, and then it's looking at different bandwidth of this signal, and then it's going to go and it's going to be mapped to various features. So for instance, if we go to the audio synthesis, you can see all these numbers of the audio synthesis, which are the parameters that are being controlled by neural nets. So if we hear something.
Okay, could you say more about the neural, what is actually happening, especially with the neural network?
So in this case, we have some inputs. It could be anything, but in this case, it's just the pickups from the springs. So we never hear the springs. But the neural network looks at the features that are being extracted from this audio signal. That's the input to the neural network. And the models in the neural networks have been trained with this input. So you need to tell it, this is what's relevant, this is what you need to look at, and this is how you're going to control the system. So this is the input to the models, and the system has been trained with this input to output a certain number of parameters. So the parameters are the synthesis, the control of the synthesis. So what happens is that we can then train the system, and I say, okay, when there's these conditions, maybe I'm just moving it like this, it's going to be this sound. When there's this thing, it's going to be this. When I just do very softly, it's going to be this thing. It could be anything. It could be pictures. It could be, any kind of information that you're trying to control. But in this case, it's audio. So it's like it learned all these states. There's a certain state on the input. There's a certain state on the output. If you want to use it correctly, it's supposed to always give you this particular output when you give it a particular input. So for instance, for emergency system, you can say when the bridge is under that kind of stress and this and that many cars and this and that, sound the alarm. But in my case, I was not interested in having it learn correctly. So because it's always chaotic, it's never really learning things in the most accurate way. So it's always approximating some kind of state. And so that gives me a chance to get new sounds, because it's never really doing the synthesis that I told it to do. It kind of moves around the synthesis. So here's a kind of a white field, or this one. So sometimes I get nice sounds. So I like this sound. So I'm going to restrain the learning system, and I have much more fine control. Kind of nice. See, it's surprising me. So I have to listen, and I have to catch the sound, and then I go back to the bigger, wider system, and it's kind of like bigger. I like this sound too. So now when I do this, it doesn't make much. It doesn't really do much. But if I open back the system, it's going to give me something. So I have a variety of sounds, but if I have a very narrow training system, like here, it's just doing that sound. That's the frozen, it's not really being modified. But then if I go, it's changing a bit. It's very narrow. It doesn't do very much because I didn't give it much big space.
What do you mean by training system?
The training system is like, again, in the neural network, you have to train the input to, you have to train models. You have to train the system so that it looks at certain inputs for a certain type of result, you know. So if you do, I don't know how it works in surveillance, but you can say, I'm going to train you so that you always recognize that this person is probably a criminal, you know. So you give it criterias. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it's kind of like you have to make, with the artificial intelligence systems, with the software, you have to get it to, you have to tell it kind of like a child, when this happens, this is what you do, okay? So when these kind of people come in, you know, this is what you're going to do. Sound the alarm, whatever, you know. So it's very interesting. I haven't really looked into it too much because that's not my field and that's not what I'm too interested, but I have to be aware of it, that you know, that it actually has, it's based on a value system, you know, definitely.
So what is this sound? Like, it's just a, like...
So this sound is like a, it's one of those, it's like the synthesizers, but it's like fixed in a state because it's not being modified by the neural nets. So if I start going like this, then it starts, and it'll start moving back to its natural state.
Okay. So it's kind of like a river's constant stream until something...
Like until a fish jumps up.
Yeah, okay.
Something like that. Yeah, so that's like its neutral point, and then it goes. Oops. I have to do this again. Oh no, this doesn't go here. So another dormant state might be this. So nothing happens. You know, it's just its normal thing, and then it has a very slow space to move. Mm-hmm. Some of them have really large spaces to move through, but this one is very. That's all it does. So they each are kind of like characters, I guess. They're like characters that have certain skills.
Mm-hmm. And habits.
And habits, yeah, exactly. That's a good term, yeah, habits.
Moi je suis pas un gastéropode, toi t'es tout. Le regard, c'est pas gastéropode. C'est une discussion au
Ça fait partie de votre travail du coup.
Ouais, exactement.
C'est vous qui avez créé les cartes?
Oui. Et en fait, on a réfléchi à des cartes spécialement pour ce festival, en fait, Talk Show Festival. Donc, c'est vrai que notre travail, il est sur le discours de toute façon, mais là, c'est quand même plus lié à l'actualité aussi, sur l'influence des réseaux sociaux dans la politique, etc.
Ok.
Ce genre de choses. Ouais.
C'est souvent participatif comme ça?
Oui.
Hop, je la regarde.
Voilà.
Quel type d'activité faites-vous pour distraire votre cerveau des tâches quotidiennes qui vous occupent l'esprit? Quel est le rôle des réseaux sociaux après une rupture sentimentale? Waouh. J'en sais rien.
Ça sent l'expérience ou pas?
Je crois pas. J'ai pas l'impression de... Je l'aime pas, je vais changer.
Celle-ci, voilà.
Avez-vous déjà regretté un tweet?
Non.
Pensez-vous que l'ouverture et la transparence du gouvernement soient essentielles au bien commun? Que l'ouverture, c'est quoi la transparence du gouvernement?
Tout ne peut pas être transparent. Tout ne peut pas être transparent.
Voilà.
On sait très bien qu'il se passe des choses dont on ne parle pas, parce que c'est des trucs secrets, que ce soit sur le plan militaire, que ce soit sur le plan... On a déjà été dépendant d'un outil de communication.
Oui, oui. J'ai eu des informations, j'ai eu un doute après, mais je pense que j'ai été dépendant, oui, en ce qui me concerne. En tout cas, je me suis trouvé confronté à des informations, des médias.
Non, mais c'est un outil de communication.
Ou un outil de,
téléphone,
l'outil de communication,
voici,
ça peut être un téléphone.
On a plutôt des informations, vous dites en fait.
On n'a pas tout à fait répondu parce que je serais tenté de dire que la dépendance, elle est essentielle aujourd'hui, elle est prioritaire avec tout ce qui est téléphone, smartphone, etc. Parce que vous avez les informations et nous sommes dépendants de ça en temps T, c'est-à-dire à la minute près. Et vous prenez la mauvaise habitude, quand vous avez loupé une information, d'aller la rechercher.
Connaissons-nous des autres à travers le prisme des médias? En fait, c'est plutôt ce que il veut nous montrer. Il veut nous montrer, en fait, c'est une sorte d'apparence forcée et aussi le désir d'être quelqu'un. Donc, il y a beaucoup de choses, pas seulement l'apparence, mais aussi on peut retrouver les caractères. Les caractères, l'envie de partager quelque chose plutôt qu'autre chose.
Là, tu penses plutôt aux médias sociaux, en fait.
Oui.
Ouais.
Selon moi, il y a des choses qui sortent plus honnêtement dans les réseaux sociaux tels que Facebook, en fait. Peut-être que devant un écran, tout seul, la personne peut s'exprimer mieux, réfléchir un peu plus, ou avoir le courage de partager quelque chose de sa propre sensibilité.
D'accord.
Plutôt que le faire en face. Et c'est aussi quelque chose pour augmenter pour l'estime de soi-même, en soi-même,
Ouais.
en fait.
Oui, puisqu'il y a les mèmes, etc.
Ouais.
Les commentaires.
Et en fait, je pense que maintenant, on est dans une période où l'homme surtout, selon moi, la femme, mais l'homme, il s'ouvre un peu plus vers soi-même, vers sa propre sensibilité. Et des fois, c'est grâce aux médias sociaux, parce qu'en fait, tu peux aussi trouver trouver aussi des rapports avec des autres personnes. Je suis pas l'unique personne, la seule personne qui pense ça.
Oui, te connecter aux autres, trouver des gens qui sont comme toi.
C'est aussi une sorte de communauté.
Ouais.
Une sorte de communauté, mais en même temps, c'est une façon de faire la communication, de la conversation, quelque chose de un peu superficiel, un peu pas trop engagé quoi.
Mais c'était pas non plus. On n'avait pas forcément d'heure à laquelle on devait l'utiliser, mais aussi c'est un peu pas. Enfin, on avait d'autres choses à faire, on ne l'utilisait pas forcément. On regardait quand même un peu des cassettes. Nous on enregistrait, on regardait le lendemain ce qui passait tard, mais il n'y a jamais eu vraiment de. Enfin, parfois les gens ont l'impression que les enfants vont avoir envie d'être collés à la télévision. Alors, le matin on regardait les dessins animés quand même. Puis il y avait toujours les pubs. Maintenant, quand je regarde les dessins animés, je me dis il y avait quand même beaucoup de pubs avant Noël et tout. On se faisait quand même bien attaquer par les pubs, céréales et tout. Et puis finalement, on l'utilisait pas non plus tant que ça. Mais par contre, j'avais du mal à concevoir qu'il y ait des gens qui n'avaient pas la télé chez eux. Moi, quand j'avais des amis qui me disaient j'ai pas la télé chez eux, je disais ah ouais, t'as pas la télé.
Surtout que c'était quand ton enfance à peu près.
Moi, je suis né en 97.
97.
Oui, c'est un choix idéologique, tandis que moi, c'était un fait de société.
Ouais, c'est ça, exactement.
Dans les années 2000.
Tandis que là, c'est vraiment un choix idéologique.
Oui, c'est par défaut presque.
Ouais.
Oui, si on n'a pas la télé aujourd'hui. Mais moi, je trouve que ça a encore changé maintenant parce qu'en fait, on regarde tellement sur l'ordinateur.
Non, aujourd'hui, j'ai plus la télé.
Il n'y a pas besoin d'avoir une télé. Ouais, c'est ça.
Le plus, c'était bien.
Oui.
J'ai plus
la télé.
Ah, j'ai plus la télé.
Ben oui, parce que effectivement, c'est sur un téléphone portable.
Ouais, non, je l'ai plus.
On regarde des programmes.
Mais je vais regarder des programmes de la télé sur l'ordinateur.
Voilà, ouais. Donc on regarde quand même la télé.
Donc je la regarde quand même, mais sans la
télé.
Ouais.
Oui, mais sans le côté où tout le monde regarde la même chose en même temps. Parce que c'est ça quand même le principe de la télé.
Ouais.
Il y avait 3 chaînes. Enfin, au début, il y avait une chaîne. Bon, ça c'était quand même encore avant. Après, il y avait 3 chaînes. Je suis quand même pas vieille à ce point-là. Et...
je pense qu'on nous imposait vraiment la télé. La télé était imposée un peu. Enfin, on allumait la télé et on regardait ce qu'on nous donnait à voir. Alors que maintenant...
Parce que les trucs sur YouTube, c'est... Non, enfin, pas sur YouTube, les fils, etc.
Ah ouais, non, ça aussi, ouais. Ça a remplacé en quelque sorte.
Oui, ça a remplacé.
Ça impose au quotidien.
Non, c'est vrai, ça impose aussi,
en tout cas, je pense que maintenant, il y a cette idée que le spectateur, il choisit. Mais effectivement, c'est un peu une fausse idée. C'est pas si simple que ça. Parce qu'effectivement, sur Internet, en fait, on choisit pas tellement.
La question du choix, c'est valable quel que soit l'outil.
Et je pense aussi que c'est une façon pour dire... on s'est rendu compte qu'on est vraiment beaucoup dans le monde. Et peut-être que des fois, on s'est rendu compte qu'on ne compte pas. On ne compte pas trop dans le monde. Et donc, c'est la façon pour dire moi j'existe. Je suis là, j'ai des amis, il est tout enregistré. Et
oui, c'est vrai.
Je fais partie de la vie.
Ouais.
Welcome to the final chapter of this broadcast, Part 3, Exploring Systems of Self-Governing and Understanding. We start with What Makes You Rich by Ariat Abukura, a meditative moment that asserts that Alan Watts can still like how it is. Then we move on to exploring the world of Helene Derrick's Dreaming by Arthur Fleischer, a teaser for an upcoming narration about a homeowners association in Glendale, Los Angeles. It focuses on the relationships, affects, and emotions between the homeowners and their front lawns, observing how front lawns are submitted to norms and rules in each neighborhood. Then we revisit the Titanic, the Princess, her onions, and the perseverance of the human soul, with Part 5 of Forced Emotions. Following this, we have Bertolt Brecht's testimony in the House Committee on Un-American Activities. In 1947, German poet and playwright and theoretician Bertolt Brecht, then living in the United States, was called to testify before the House Un-American Activities Commission, being accused of writing a number of very revolutionary poems, plays, and other writings. This video is a recording of excerpts of his testimony. Then we return to the kitchen for more empathetic cooking with Radio Soriali and a recipe for fateh. Another piece from the series 1001 Recipes, where the Syrian Exile Radio invited listeners to send in recipes from home alongside memories of the dish. The resulting videos from the recipes and memories recorded by the group in France help to harbor connection and empathy through cooking and a togetherness within a diaspora through a shared virtual meal and associated memories that then expands beyond and can continue. Then we move to a space outside of time with the Kepler collection by Devin Zhang, edited by Lee Lester. Through futuristic fashion and movement, we are invited to dream of better ways of living together with Kepler 452b, an international art collective based in Berlin that brings together dancers, filmmakers, designers, musicians, visual artists, scientists, cryptocurrency, and more, initiated by the artist Mali. Together, they imagine new ways of being together in a future egalitarian and sustainable world on the potentially habitable exoplanet Kepler 452b, discovered by NASA in 2015. Then we have the concluding chapters of Forced Emotions by Guy Honstatur, Part 6 and 7 of a video performance of the princess cutting a dozen white onions while watching the death scene of Jack from the Titanic.
What makes you itch? What sort of a situation would you like? Let's suppose, I do this often in vocational guidance of students. They come to me and say, well, we're getting out of college and we haven't the faintest idea what we want to do. So I always ask the question, what would you like to do if money were no object? How would you really enjoy spending your life? Well, it's so amazing. As a result of our kind of educational system, crowds of students say, well, we'd like to be painters, we'd like to be poets, we'd like to be writers, but as everybody knows, you can't earn any money that way. Or another person says, well, I'd like to live an out-of-doors life and ride horses. I say, do you want to teach in a riding school? Let's go through with it. What do you want to do? When we finally got down to something which the individual says he really wants to do, I will say to him, you do that. And forget the money. Because if you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. You'll be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living, that is, to go on doing things you don't like doing.
Are there not two greens? The verse that plays with the words and the one that plays with our senses? The verse that awakens our thoughts and the one whose touch appeases our sorrows? Are there not two perspectives which converge into a vanishing point, itself oriented towards the earth? The lawn is like the poet. Its plot is its island. Her name is Margie, and she's speaking with two friends, Jerome and Agustine. Next to them is standing Helen, who's not familiar with them, but who sees in them an emotional potential. We're sitting at Peter's home, our actual president for the monthly meeting of the Glendale co-owners. Since Carl's death, which was extremely brutal for all of us, the organization has been looking for a full-time treasurer. And we see in Helen, new among our ranks, a potential recruit. Once the drama reaches an end. Margie's left, tears rolling on their cheeks, then wiped away. The Farrelly twins recall Carl, their faces inward. They hold a picture taken a year ago where one distinguishes our group united among the flames. We pass this image on to each other all around the table. Memories mix up in a final impetus, then Peter puts it back on the table. His sigh is touching and decides to declare the General Assembly open.
Is it true that you have written a number of very revolutionary poems, plays, and other writings?
I have written a number of poems and songs and plays in the fight against Hitler, and of course they can be considered therefore as revolutionary, because I, of course, was for the overthrow of that government.
I would like to ask Mr. Burke whether or not he wrote a poem, a song rather, entitled Forward, We've Not Forgotten.
Forward, we've what?
Forward, we've not forgotten. Our strength in the fights we have won. No matter what may threaten, forward, not forgotten. How strong we are as one. Only these our hands now aching built the roads, the walls, the towers. Did you write that, Mr. Burke?
No, I wrote a German poem, but that is very different, you see, from this thing.
Are you now, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party of any country?
Mr. Chairman, I have heard my colleagues and they considered this question not as proper, but I am a guest in this country and do not want to enter in any legal arguments, so I will answer your question fully as well I can. I was not a member or am not a member of any Communist Party.
Your answer is that you have never been a member of the Communist Party.
That is correct.
You were not a member of the Communist Party for Germany?
No, I was not.
Fateh reminds me of our former family reunions each Friday. Fateh has been a sacred dish in my family for a long time. I remember my father, it was him who cooked it. We worked under his directions and did as he said. My father only did what came from the heart. Now, my father has been abducted by ISIS like many other people. Since we left Raqqa, we have no news of our home. Since 2013, we have sometimes made fateh, but it doesn't taste the same since my father has disappeared. Since that day our family hasn't gathered, our house in Raqqa was where we would meet. It is now occupied by ISIS. Those 5 years have been like a long dream. We have understood we, as human beings, have the right to live. We have learned that in our host countries so far from home, each person has rights.
And of course, the precious liquids. Nous disjonctés.
That intervention was really out of this world. And that concludes our broadcast of Empathy, Knowledge, and Self-Government. Thank you so much, dear audience, for joining us today in this act of collective viewing and discussion. We hope these moving image works have left you in a state of some contemplation and connection, and that the walls you may or may not perceive between your inner and outer worlds are a bit more fluid now than when we began. Thank you also to Alexander Robes, our programmer collaborator who has built the technical viewing infrastructure for this and every episode of the BCC channel, and to Anna Hess and Sasha Barreau of le149.net for hosting this project. And many deep thanks to Clémence de Montgolfier for producing most of the TBCS works that you saw today, and to Clémence's parents for bringing her into this world. And many thanks again to all our contributors for sharing their work in this episode, for inspiring the creation of archival works based on your work, and to our subjects for welcoming us and our questions into your physical and mental workspaces. So thank you to Amar Albaik, Bertolt Brecht, Elizabeth Aitai, Edward Said, Ariad Abukura, Arthur Fléchard, Guillaume Honsdottir, Mako Ishizuka, Letitia Sanami, Radio Soriali, especially Caroline Ayoub, Serge Tisserand, the visitors of Le Panacé Moko Contemporary Art Center, and Kepler 452b, especially Lee Lester and Molly for their edits that we saw. And let us now close with a reading from the Tao Te Ching, found on dailytao.org on the 13th of November, 2018. The Tao does not take sides. It gives birth to both good and evil. The Master doesn't take sides. She welcomes both saints and sinners. The Tao is like a bellows. It is empty yet infinitely capable. The more you use it, the more it produces. The more you talk of it, the less you understand. Hold on to the center.